Questions remain this morning over events leading up to Mt Maunganui's deadly landslide and whether an opportunity to evacuate the campsite was missed. Mahe Drysdale is Tauranga Mayor and joins me this morning. Mahe, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, do you know what time the campsite, management was told by council that there was an issue with the mount?
Look, there's multiple slips on the mount. So my understanding is there was a direction to close Mawao, which was the walking tracks, etc. And my understanding is that was around 8:56. We made that decision, and as they were setting up those fences, obviously this large landslip into the camp happened.
And when the decision was made to close the walking track, how come the decision wasn't also made to close what was below it?
Yeah, look, these are good questions, and that's part of the reason we're doing this independent review. We want to know exactly what we knew. I've had anecdotal evidence that there was a small slip in a similar area, but I want to know what were the facts, what was known by who, and then we can have a conversation around what should or shouldn't have been done. Also, did we make the right decisions in the circumstances? And that's all discussions that we need to have in public.
That's fair. So in terms of, because I think it's unfair for anyone to criticise campground management if they weren't actually told. So they weren't told to evacuate anyone before that 9:30 slip happened.
Yeah, look, again, I don't want to sort of get in now and say this or this didn't happen, and that's why we've brought in. We are going to bring in an independent so that they can make those decisions, because we don't know who knew what when, and as soon as we know that, we can actually have an educated conversation. And I think just to the public, I know there's a lot of questions to be answered, and we've given you our assurance we're going to answer those and we're going to make those public. But kind of coming in and saying this should have happened or that shouldn't have happened is actually not that helpful. When we're at the moment trying to recover, unfortunately, the bodies of six members that are still up the hill. So we want to get that done, but we give you our absolute assurance that the next step is doing a review and finding the answers to the questions that people have.
I think most members of the public would find that totally understandable. The recovery operation has to be priority number one. But you do have hundreds of staff at Tauranga City Council, if we've spoken about before. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. I'm not asking you to make a determination about what should have happened, but surely you will know whether someone picked up the phone and called someone else during this period. Has no one asked those questions yet?
Look, there is information there. We just don't want to launch little bits of information here, there, and everywhere, without going through a proper process. So that's very much what we're determined to do, and we can look at the facts as they stand, and look at the timelines rather than saying we knew this here or that there. But absolutely, some of those questions have started to be collated.
Right.
We've got good records of a whole lot of things.
Because Mahe, I guess the reason I ask is that there will be people out there who'll say that it's a butt covering exercise. When you say we're going to delay this and do a proper inquiry, that comes out obviously later. Will there be as much interest or accountability taken at that point as there might be now? Can you just reassure people that that is not the case here?
Oh, absolutely. We just want to look at the whole picture. Look, we've got 6 people have tragically lost their life here. So, this is serious. This is a severe landslip, and we are going to have the answers. We are going to stand up this review as soon as we get to that next phase of after we've recovered the bodies, and we are going to work at pace to try to get answers as soon as we can. But it is important that we do this in the right order, and I don't think with all due respect that when 6 people die, I don't think the interest is going to wane, in the next couple of months, and I think people will be very interested in the facts and in those answers.
Mahe, there's a lot of stuff, and I spoke about it this morning with Mark Mitchell. There's a lot of stuff on social media that gets circulated, but one of the things that people are sending to me this morning is about the trees that were removed over the last few years, exotic trees that were removed from the mount. Have you asked for any advice on that situation?
Look, there's a number of things. There's the trees, which would become part of the review. There's also some land stability reports I understand that we've done. So we absolutely they will become relevant as to what we did or didn't know, and what decisions should or shouldn't have been made along those lines. So that stuff is all important. I think actually the Herald published a report, and it showed the before and after. You will notice that the before, this was an area that was covered in bush and trees, and those have all come down in the slips. But we'll certainly look and see, was there exotic trees removed in that area, and could have that had some impact on this. Those are again all good questions, and we are giving you our assurance that they will be answered.
Mahe, is it possible? Because you talk to people about this, and some people say the blame game will happen, but at the end of the day, this was a horrible, tragic accident. Massive rainfall. You couldn't have prevented a tragedy like this from happening when the land was obviously just so wet. Do you sympathise with that point of view as well?
Oh, there's certainly a view of that, and tragically, we lost another 2 lives out in Welcome Bay, where a slip came down and took out a house. So landslips happen. They are unpredictable. They are a natural disaster, but we just want to be certain. What are the facts? What did we know? What decisions did we make? And were they the right ones in those circumstances? But at the end of the day, this was a natural disaster. But was there more we could have done to stop that tragic loss of life? We want to know as much as the community and the families around that, and that's again the assurance that I give you. We will find those answers.
And just very quickly, do you know whether the recovery operation can get back underway today, or is still TBC?
Look, it's still to be confirmed. We had some specialist equipment flown in yesterday that was set up. We've got the engineers there now. The police are determined to get back up there, and we're hoping, as long as the engineers give the all clear this morning, they'll get to work early this morning as soon as that clearance has been given.
All right. Appreciate your time this morning, Mahe. Thank you, Mahe Drysdale, who is the Tauranga Mayor.